This is a double yarn, and I'm showing it in two colors, but it looks very nice in a single color and looks very nice in a double color. It's a little easier to understand the process in a double color. So this is a 2-yarn twisted chain edge cast on. It has a big disadvantage. As you work, you're going to be twisting the yarns with each stitch, and the result is the yarns are going to curl up, so it can be annoying, and you might need to stop along the way and untwist the yarns, though you can just use your finger to pull the twist further away from the working edge and let it go. So I've started with a slip knot made with both yarns. This is a placeholder. This is not a stitch. This is not one of your stitches. You don't count this. Try again. You don't count this as a stitch as you're working. When you're done with your cast on, you drop this off and the first stitch will be held in place and you won't need it. Okay, so we're going to start with the gold. Now, the first stitch you make is the chain color. The second one is the main color that you'd be casting on with. You bring the yarn in front of the color B to the back and over the needle. You do the same with the second yarn. You bring it in front to the back and over, so that you now have, two stitches on the needle, one light, one dark in our case, but doesn't really matter. Then, using your other needle, lift the one over the other, gently snug up the gold yarn, gently snug up the second yarn, and the same thing in front of the dark yarn to the back and over, in front of the light yarn to the back and over. Take number 1, pass it over number 2. Gently snug up the edge. Gently snug, gently snug. Now, this cast on tends to be fairly loose because of these twists, but if you do snug the gold tight, you will get a tighter cast on. Front to back to over, from front to back to over. Bind off, snug up. And as you see already, I'm beginning to get my twist. That's because with every stitch I do, I'm twisting once and then twisting twice. But the twists are going two places. The twists are going into the cast on and the twists are going into the tails of the yarn. And it's that extra twist in the cast on. There we go, one over the other. I'm trying to keep this where you can see it and try and keep it at good focus length. And again, in front to the back, yarn over. In front to the back, yarn over. Now, some cast-ons have fronts and backs, and one side is more attractive than the other. One side looks like a row of knits, one side looks like a row of pearls. This cast-on is not reversible, which is to say it's not identical front and back, but it is very attractive on both sides. So either side could be the front to the back. Gently snug up. As you see, as I'm working, just by putting the yarns fairly close together on the needle, I keep tension on the darker yarn, which is our main bit of knitting. Because you'll notice I'm holding the yarns down below. Snug it up. And look at our twists. Since every stitch that we cast on requires 2 twists, you can see how I am getting these twists that I need to push back away from the tip of the knitting, or I need to let them unravel and unloop. Whichever works for you, you deal with it or you don't deal with it, whatever is most convenient for you. I think the cast-on's worth it. Okay, so in front, over, in front, over. The extra twists, creating extra yarn in the cast-on, extra twisted yarn in the cast-on, and this extra twisted yarn creates extra ease, making this a very stretchy cast-on. And as I say, I'm doing it 2 colors so you can see the the process, you can also see the chain more clearly with the two colors. But it works and looks lovely in a single color. So sometimes it's just easier to keep track of which yarn is which. Now, if you were doing this with a single color, you'd want to have a long tail. You'd want to have a tail about 4 times longer than your desired knitting. So if you're casting on about 20 inches worth of stitches, you'd want 4 times 20 inches of yarn for your tail. If you had a tail, it's much easier to unravel these twists because the tail is even with 120 inches, is going to be smaller. So on one side we have a sort of chain, but not quite a chain. But on the front side, and this is definitely the front side, we definitely have this golden chain that's running along the base. As I say, if it's in white, you'd have a white chain running along the base. There is, chain stitch, chain stitch, chain stitch. And you'd see the chain just as clearly with a single strand of, or a single color of yarn if it worked as a long tail. If it worked as a long tail, you could just have a single loop at the beginning, not a slip stitch. The disadvantage, there it is, trailing behind me, twists and twists and twists and twists of yarn. The advantage, super, 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 super stretchy. I mean, this is a cast on that stretches out very, very readily, so that you could have a really nice, super stretchy edge, perfect for, say, a child's pullover where you're doing a top-down cast on and you want to have something that's going to stretch over a baby's head, or perhaps for socks, or for hats because it looks pretty. I think it's a pretty cast on to have hanging around your face with this pretty double chain. As I say, the disadvantage is that your first row, which will be worked, when you finish your cast and you start knitting, your first row is going to be on the wrong side, so not much of a problem for ribbing or some things, especially since this side does not have a very clear-cut knit or purl stitch. It really doesn't matter that row 1. It's if you have a pattern that specifically starts row 1 on the right side, I would do a foundation row. I do a single row of pearls or a single row in pattern, and make a foundation row before starting your pattern on the right side. So enjoy this cast on that is pretty, is attractive. It's a little bit of a pain to do, but sometimes beauty is worth the effort. Bye-bye.